Good morning, folks. Black Guy back once again. This is a quick channel update. See, folks, I didn't want to be talking about any of this stuff. I mean, I had my first toe-to-toe with the WEF in 2000 when they were still called the World Trade Organization, and I went down and was a part of a big protest in Melbourne. Back then, I was a pretty staunch... I don't know if I was a leftist per se, but that was the side I was on. I never liked the clickiness of the left. The left belief itself is the truest thing I've ever heard. But the reason I was in that position is because of the war in Iraq and Julian Assange and all of those things that now seem to be the province of the centrists, the libertarians, and the anti-establishment right-wing people. So that tends to be where I find myself at the moment. But my positions haven't changed. The Overton window has been moved significantly. But anyway, I never wanted to be a news correspondent or a political commentator or anything like that. I want to make comic books and video games. I want to live in a peaceful world where I can raise my family in peace. But now we have this pressing issue. Let's not forget, America took 20 years to lose to some shepherds in Afghanistan. As the father of a young boy, he's only just turned 3, you might think it's a little bit crazy for me to be that worried about something like the draft. But a significant point that I heard about the conflict in Afghanistan going on as long as it did, there were fathers and sons who fought that war as young enlistees. It went on for that long that 2 generations ran the risk of being shot in an unnecessary war in a foreign land. And I think it's the duty of every parent, fathers in particular, fathers of sons in particular, to say right now to all these corrupt leaders that our sons are not your property. You will not be drafting our children unless enemy forces actually come to our shores. It's just not going to happen. We'll fight you in the street. We fought you over COVID. What do you think we'll do for our own blood? Don't be ridiculous. Don't start this shit. It won't end well for anyone. So that's my big issue right now. I'm working on an ad campaign, logos, basically with that message. You are not having our sons for your fucking conflict. It's just not happening. And we'll give our lives for that more than we will for Israel or Ukraine or wherever else you want to cook up and set up one of your new smart cities. Because let's not pretend this isn't all connected. That's ridiculous at this point. I know there's a lot of vectors. There's a lot of elements to all of this global conspiracy. But they're all converging. At this point, if you can't see that, it's willful on your part. You just don't want to know. Well, I'm afraid you're going to know. One way or the other, this is coming to wherever you are. Wherever you live, it's coming for you and your children. So the time is now, and we need to be prepared to do anything necessary, starting with withholding taxes and large public protests, letters to representatives, making sure that we vote these bastards out, and call them out for their hypocrisy. You know, Albo in particular, he was a staunch supporter of the Palestinians not so very long ago. There's video evidence circulating right now. How did they get to you, man? What dirt do they have on you? Have you been a very naughty boy, Albo? It'll all come out. It'll all come out eventually. And I'm not waiting for a savior. I don't believe Ricardo Bossi or any of these fuckwits are actually anything. If they're not psyops, they're incompetent fools who run their mouths. Because Bossi thought we were going to throw them all out 2 Decembers ago. Okay? The fact that he's not in jail says to me that he's a psyop. Topher Field, man, I've already had a rip at you. Oh my God. The people worldwide who are on the wrong side of this after being so staunchly against lockdowns can support what Israel's doing in Gaza and beyond their 67 border, beyond their 48 border. The hypocrisy is palpable. The conservatives are losing. Tim Pool, for having neocon pro-Zionist guests on, took a 90% hit to his ratings. He was challenging CNN 2 weeks ago. Now he's down to 30K views as opposed to 280K, 310K every day. He's down to 10% of his earnings for taking a wrong position. Thankfully, after having Scott Horton on today, I can say that things are turning around. And if you've been like me punishing Timcast by not attending, maybe you ought to give him a shot. Go back and watch today's episode, and if you agree with what Scott had to say, which was excellent as usual, share it. Share it with your friends. And this isn't to support Timcast, this is to support the message. Scott Horton is on the money. If you don't know the history of this, then you shouldn't take a position. You should sit back and talk to someone who knows what the hell's going on. If you're watching the mainstream news and getting your narratives from definitely controlled organizations, whether they're controlled by government or private interests, it's either from the intelligence community and their directives, or it's from BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and their total ownership of everything. The two converge, I am sure. I am sure that if we could look into who State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock's customers actually are, they would be governments, or worse, crowned heads. Anyway, again, this conflict was started because the British, who had no right to be there, came in and drew lines and gave shit that wasn't theirs to other people. Yes, I can understand there is some parallels to everywhere else the British colonized, but I don't think it's as simple as that. This is post-World War II we're talking about. We're supposed to live in a modern era. The Zionists are so brainwashed that they literally think that the place was a desert until 1918 or 1948, whichever you choose. They're not even that sure themselves because it's just flimsy fucking propaganda. It was completely inexcusable for that sort of a land seizure to occur at that point in human history. And to be honest, if us and the Aboriginals were flinging rockets at each other, I would not be opposed to telling all the Europeans to go back to Europe at that point because the children matter more, okay? The way things are, I think the Zionists have made Israel a failed project. This is not going to stop. Nobody wants the Palestinian refugees in their country. So the smart and sensible and reasonable thing to do is to take the Jews in and let Palestine be Palestinian. And let's just pretend Israel never happened. Or, it'll go on and on and on. I'm not an expert in the issue, but it's been on the television for my entire life. Okay, I remember when it was the PLO. I remember when Rabin was assassinated. I remember when the CIA poisoned Arafat with polonium. They don't want peace because it's profitable. And as the comedian Sam Tripoli pointed out, Israel is the land bridge between Africa and Europe. There's a lot of trade that goes through there. It's a key point to hold. Well, you should have put a Union Jack in it if you wanted to keep it. You can't be using a people who were as treated as poorly as the Jews were by the Nazis as human shields for your crypto-colonialism. Okay? The cover's blown. The party's over. Cecil Rhodes' plan is in the toilet. You didn't quite get there, boys. You came close. But it's time to pack up your bat and your ball and get the fuck out of here. So, back to the channel update. Like I said, I'd rather be making games, comics, video games, that sort of thing. That's my skill set. That's my talent. I draw, I world build. I love that shit. I'd rather be sharing that with my son than having to give him life advice on how to survive a conflict. Because I'm no expert in that either. But yeah, I want to get back to making this channel what it was originally intended to be. I only kind of started it up as informed dissent during the COVID madness. It was already there as a channel. It was supposed to be for a comic book related podcast about local creators and my history in comics and how that sort of shaped not only my comics involvement, but it's through comics that I became a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist. From fellow creators to looking for comics in old bookshops, the things that I found and started to read, they've led me to this position. They've helped me to see through all the propaganda. And then I went to uni and studied graphic design, and in that course we covered semiotics. We also covered Bernays, the father of propaganda, Marshall McLuhan, media theory. So I got a pretty good grasp on the propaganda side. That I am something of an expert in. And following on from there, I started to look into psychological warfare and the history of that and the individuals involved in that. So I'm not a complete armchair speculator on any of this stuff. It's partly in my background. I've also worked in politics. I was a staffer for the Labor Party, and I spent a lot of time helping the Greens write speeches, formulate campaign positions in state and local elections. But I'm done with them. The Greens lost their soul when they knifed Lee Rhiannon in the back, and they're just not the same party since Bob Brown left either. I stood next to Bob Brown on the picket lines fighting the World Trade Organization in Melbourne. That's where I met Bob Brown, on the picket. Okay? So, the Greens, they're no longer a grassroots movement. You can see that they had a unified position on the vote, on the referendum that we just had, when a grassroots movement would have surely sided with each local tribe and taken the opinion of those constituents and backed that. Surely that should have been their position from the philosophical land that they stake out with their ideology. How could they do anything else? Well, the Greens has been co-opted. It's a bunch of upper middle class wankers who feel guilty and a bunch of lawyers in a central office who dictate the policy. It's not the Greens of old. And, that's why I don't work with them anymore, for one reason. The other side is they're no longer fighting the World Trade Organization. They're no longer fighting for freedom of speech. They're no longer concerned with civil rights in the way that they should be based on who they used to be. Okay? So it's not that I've changed, man. Everything's moved around us. And I'm sure some of you feel exactly the same way. I'm sure a lot of you are from other parts of the political spectrum. It doesn't matter. The issues are bigger than the politics. In fact, I still remember the 90s. Politics wasn't every aspect of life, even that recently in history. What they've done is primed us in this way, and that's why we were so susceptible to the mass psychosis that formed around COVID. It really is. It really is. It's what's made us a tribalist culture where you're standing with your political party matters far more than whether you're a good person with any kind of moral backing to your actions. Which is why we see so much hypocrisy from young greenies, young leftists. Latest iPad, just went to Bali, but you should catch public transport, eat the crickets, and live in the pod. They're literally insane because of the programming. And, I made my last little short there about the Gen Z work ethic. Well, if you want them to have a good work ethic, you have to repair the incentive structure. The incentive structure is the core issue. It's not a class issue. It's not a gender issue. It's not a political issue. The incentive structure is broken, so people don't get the reward for the work that they do. They've got corrupt ideas about why that is. They think an increase in the minimum wage will fix it, when that'll actually exacerbate every single step of the problem. The problem, as usual, is government regulation and fascism. Australia has an incredibly soft fascist society right now, and we're not even aware of it. You're swimming in it. You're swimming in it. Do you know if you get what the Americans would call an EBT card, a welfare card, you can't spend it at your local corner shop and keep your local economy going. You have to spend it at Coles and Woolies. Who's the major shareholders? What's going on here? What is going on here? It's just lockdown continued. The big box stores get all the cash, the local businesses get flushed. Everything's moving in one direction. From my basic reading of chaos theory, they call that a strange attractor. If you see all the trees in the forest falling in one direction, it's not random. Something is causing things to fall in the same direction. Same with the politics. You see people failing upward. It's because the thing that they were captain of was supposed to fail, and they are now being rewarded for crashing that enterprise, whatever it was. But yeah, when you see someone failing up, they're probably an insider, or at least useful to the insiders. So, yeah, I want to get back to the comics. I can't even stay on track with this. These other issues are pressing in on us so massively at the moment. Thankfully, it's not seeming to result in the same sort of mental health crises that COVID was. Anyway, back to the channel. I'll be doing a series about the books that made me who I am. Lots of comic books, some weird underground publications, magazines, zines, all these things that have contributed to my worldview and my art style, my philosophical stance. I think you'll find it very interesting. It might be on a second channel. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this exactly. The podcast is most likely at this stage going to be called Drawn Out, the Indie in Ink podcast, as in I'm an independent comic creator. Indie in Ink. Dumb pun, but dumb puns work. So, hopefully some of you are looking forward to that. Maybe you're not. Maybe I'll have to court a different audience for that material. But I've taken a lot of inspiration from some creators on YouTube lately, and some of them I've even been in talks with. And yeah, I'm really hoping to kind of get my stuff up to the standard where I can interact with that crowd. It won't be on the same tip. It'll be a more lighthearted approach to so-called conspiracy theory and main focus on art and story, world building, all the relevant stuff to that. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for listening to the rant. Like, share, and subscribe. Check out my art on Instagram at instagram.com/tej.mccallum. And you can find me on Twitter at blackeye808. Or right here on the Informed Dissent channel, also over on Rumble. Okay, well, I've bashed your ears a bit now. So get back to enjoying your weekend. Kiss your loved ones. Give them a hug. Because we really don't know how troubled the waters ahead are looking at this stage. There's a Russian fleet in Indonesia, so it's not like the problem's entirely far away from us either right now. So, that's it. Rant over. Peace, love, and kung fu. And I hope to see you all on my new show when it comes out. So yeah, it's called Drawn Out, the Indie in Ink podcast. And the first series I'll be doing, the books that made me. So thanks very much. Peace, love, and kung fu. Black Eye out.